Hey, Jay here. Today we're going to give you some shop work tips on this Husqvarna. It's a 2017 FC350. A lot of this is relate to a ton of different bikes. This is my buddy Rado's bike. For those that don't know, he bought it from me a few months ago. Gave him a good deal too. Anyway, so he's had about 20 hours on this bike since he got it from me. It's still a fairly low hour bike, right, Rado? Yeah, we're only at 60 hours total on this whole bike from 17. So in these bikes, these KTM Husqvarnas, these things last a long time. No reason to worry about the valves adjustment or piston, any of that anytime soon. First thing we noticed, I want to get this first. I always like to get the stuff that I don't want to forget done. Is one of his fork legs has moved. These aren't on the same line. So I don't know if they got left that way or if it moved. My guess is it moved. And in these bikes, these billet clamps don't take a lot of torque, so sometimes they can move, especially in a fall, trying to do it. So good idea to keep a track of these. So we're going to set the fork height right now. Give you some tips on that. The first thing I'm going to is I'm loosening all the pinch bolts because neither leg was kind of at a happy spot. Now I just noticed that this leg is fallen right down to where I want it on the second line. So I'm just going to snug this one up and then I'll take a measurement. Now you can do this by eye, it's totally fine. I like to use calipers. So these are just snug now, like that tight. I'll come back and torque them. We'll talk about that too. A lot of guys get on me for not torquing everything. I do torque a lot of things, and certain things that are very important, like forks. And one of the reasons you want to torque the forks is if you over tighten these, the forks won't work correctly. And if you under tighten them, then they can move. So now I'm coming down to that second line, like my other one, and I'm pretty close. And you can get little calipers like this for 30 bucks on Amazon. Okay, so I got to move this one down a hair. And this can take a little bit going back and forth. It's a little easier if you get two people, one guy moving and one guy measuring, but not a big deal. Now I'm going to snug these back up. Now this could be a good time if you want, is you could tighten up your front end if you want. So I'm going to check it right now. What have you noticed, Rado? Is it too loose? No, it feels pretty good.
Yeah, it was okay.
You pretty happy with it?
Yeah.
It could be a tiny bit tighter, huh?
Good.
So I'll show you what to do then. So now we're going to leave just the bottom ones are all tight. Guys always like to ask about this. So now I have the top ones are loose. Top ones have to be loose, so then I can get I can come in here with this 10 T-handle. You can't see in here, but right here is there's a pinch bolt. I'll loosen that, and I grab a 17 bolt up here. And I used a 6-point. Do you know what the difference in a 6-point, 12-point? Rado knows. And it's an aluminum nut up here, because if you put a 12-point on there, you can kind of dig into it and damage it a little bit more than a 12-point. So I just barely tighten that thing. Just makes it a little tighter right here. That feels pretty good. Now I'm going to go back to that pinch bolt right here. Tighten this up. Now I can go snug all these up. Just like that. And now I'm going to get my torque wrench out. Now they spec these out really low. I mean, it's so low. And it's so low that they will actually move without a crash. And everybody's got different techniques for torquing, but it's not extremely critical. So we do around 12 foot-pounds on these lower ones, just like this. And then I'll go through and hit these two while I'm here. Then I'm going to go over to the other side. Now, when you do these, you want to do it and then go back to the other one and go back and forth a couple times. So now we're set at 12. And then I'll put about 16 on the top ones, which is way over what they recommend. But on the top ones, it's still in the Japanese bikes, we run like 17 foot-pounds. Again, we're in 15, 16. So in these top ones, it's not nearly as critical that you can over tighten. With these billet clamps, if you over tighten it, it can feel twitchy. Okay. We're gonna change out the grips for Rado. These soft Emmy grips are really good, but Rado's already wearing through them, and he kind of prefers the firmer stock style ODI grips, which we really like. Take these off. It's like a 3mm. Is it 3 or 2? Gotta be about 3. It's the third one up in my kit from here. Oh no, you're fine, Rado. It's fine. Guys will figure it out. So you pull that off. This is how simple it is. And then the stock KTM one will just go on like so. So here we can actually rotate the grip to where you like it. Some guys like to have this half waffle part, you know, at a certain place in their hand. I like to have it because I'm going to get the throttle the same size, same way. So probably about like in here. And once I position the throttle, I'll finalize this, but I'm going to be right about here. And I like to have it like here so that your hand is right on the edge of this in that shape right there. Okay, so now we're going to swap out the throttle side. And on these, again, this is pretty easy on this style of, you know, what's funny is for years I never wanted to run lock-on grips. We called them clamp-on, but they really are lock-on grips because we never have them move. It's so much easier than gluing and all that junk. I was really good at it, and I had to get good at it. So you just pull this off like this, and this piece always falls on the ground. Luckily for the video, I haven't done that yet. So I'm going to pop this piece off. I just pop that off, and it's keyed right here. So the way I did it right there is actually the kind of the easiest way. We put this back on here like so. Come in here, and I just heard some grit in here. Did you hear that? So when I put it on, nothing terrible, but I'm going to clean that out a little bit. I'm just going to shoot a little contact cleaner in there. Tiny bit of lube in there. Just a little bit, not a ton. Feels all good. Okay. Now, put this back on, and then I can't see, so I have to do this. We're going to put the bars like this. I always thought this was weird too, that throttle cables were on the side of the wrong side of the handlebars, but now it's become so normal for me, it's not a big deal. So now you can position this, see these cutaways? So I'm going to position this right to the right spot. Just push it into this little, they call these cams. It's the throttle cam, and this black one is the quicker one. Rado wants to be into the power quickly and easily, especially like in here when you can kind of use more hands, and if you don't have anybody helping you. I like to use I call them nut drivers rather than a T-handle in this case, because you can hold it like this, grab your little nut driver, get it started. Now things like this that clamp, you want to make sure you're kind of even on both sides. So now I can get my T-handle out, and I'll do my final tightening. So I got them good and snug there, and we're going to bring these to where it, keep it nice and loose. We're going to bring it to where it stops, right? And then just back it off a hair. You don't want to be rubbing this end on the bar. So I backed it off a little bit. Tighten those two up. And I can get a little tighter with my T-handle. And I'm checking right here that this gap is kind of the same. I'm a little further away, so I'm going to tighten the top one a little bit. Bottom one. And this stuff doesn't have to be crazy tight because it even says on here, 5 Newton meters. That's not very much. That's like, it's like this. Because they want this to be able to move in a crash so you don't break this off. A lot of stuff can break in a crash by having it over tight. I've seen guys break off these and this. And you have to buy a whole new one of these. So that's why you don't want this stuff over tight, and you want it to be able to move in a crash. Okay, now we're going to flush out the front brake. And I like to, you can either, if you don't have this cool tool, which most people don't, you can do it by hand, and I'll talk about that as we're going. I like to get the old fluid out of the brake up here. Like you can just use blue paper towels, shop towels to soak it out of there, that kind of thing. We don't use fancy high-dollar brake fluid. .4, this stuff I get at AutoZone, and also O'Reilly's has another one. This one's really good. This one's called, I like this one because it comes in a metal can. The metal can holds it better. This one's not open yet. .4 has a high boiling point. You don't need the little tiny bottle that's $25 that's for motocross guys. Sorry. That might maybe make a few people mad, right? But I hate to see people waste money on certain stuff. I put into this small bottle, and we've rigged up a hose in here, so it makes it really kind of convenient to fill this up like this. A little easier. Okay? So here I hook on my line to here, and you can do this just with a hose into like a bottle if you wanted, or into a bucket. But you want to be able to see the hose so you can see that it's, if you're losing bubbles out of here. So I'm just going to crack this, and when I crack this, like so, then I can start sucking it out here. Now, I don't want to do this till I have somebody up top to keep it full. Doing it by yourself, you can do it, and I have done it. It's not that fun. Going down fast?
Not that bad. Oh yeah, no, quite bad.
Okay. Now, pump it a little bit.
No, it's good.
Oh, okay, hold it. Okay, pump it. Hold it. Pump it. Hold it. Pump it. Hold it. Pump it. When I'm working down here, I take this off so it doesn't get damaged. And I'm going to put it back on now. So we're pretty good right now, but we're going to do the final step is the key here. Okay, so the final step is back bleeding it. Or I'm going to push fluid up through this line right here. So I'm trying to get fluid to come up here. Don't pump anymore. Because now, so every time I do it, then he'll pump it just 3 or 4 times and then let go. Tap the line like this, it's letting air bubbles up to here, and then overnight, it's good to put a zip tie on here overnight. We'll talk about that. So, now at this point right here, I put gloves on because it actually hurts your hands quite a bit, and I think it actually is better if I sit on the floor and I put my fingers on the back side of the rotor, and I push on the caliper, and it pushes bubbles up. Do you see the bubbles come up?
No bubbles yet.
He wasn't looking. So give it like three pumps until it gets firm there.
Okay.
Okay, now let go. Now you don't want to pump it too much because it's pushing air bubbles down. You just want to get it firm. My rule of thumb is if you do it 3 times, now watch. Any bubbles?
No bubbles.
No bubbles, just fluid. Can you do it one more time? If I can do it 3 times with no bubbles, usually you're good.
No bubbles.
No bubbles. Okay, we're good. And I kind of can tell because it's so hard to do down here. If it's a little easier, then I know there's bubbles in the line. Feel pretty good?
Feels really good, man.
Like way better?
Yep.
Okay.
100%.
I cleaned this off. I'm going to put it back on here. Now, one little thing you'll learn over the years is you want a little grease on these right here. Just right in here. Every single, that's way too much. Yeah, it is way too much. But it'll pop out. Now, and I'm putting it on that surface, not so much the threads. The threads aren't what sticks. If anybody's worked on bikes a lot, they've had these strip out with especially the Japanese bikes, they have a Phillips head here. And we've had so many we've had to drill out over the years because they get seized in place. So you just go like this, and they don't got to be that tight. You don't want to over tighten these. So brake feels awesome, and we've come out a few clicks. We've moved it back in. We're feeling pretty good. I think you could even go a little more. You could play with it. Maybe look at one of my bikes. I don't have a KTM up here yet. We'll look at one of mine, and I think this is touching the starter button. So I think you could even go in a little further. That way, when you pull that brake, you're getting right to that sweet spot. That brake tool I have, it's called Vacula. If anybody's wondering online, if you only have one bike,
That feels great.
everything feels pretty good there.
Yep.
Huh? Okay, so that's all feeling good. Fork's all done. Let's move on to our next thing. Now it's time to get down and dirty. We're going to change the oil. And I got a 6-point wrench on here. The 250s and 350s, the oil comes out the back of the motor like this. That's all you have to do to loosen it. Rado did a good job and didn't over tighten it the last time he did it, which is always nice. A lot of guys over tighten this and then it really damages that washer and wears it out and risk stripping these threads. You strip these threads out. Hey, how long do you think you have on this oil change?
About 4 hours.
4 hours. So I get this question a lot. See this right here? It goes, oh, you can go a little longer. This is just about right. You want it just about this point right here. I would even be a tiny bit before this. So, you know, track your hours and see where you were at. And maybe just be like a half hour before this, you know, your next one. More detail there. Now, I didn't warm up the bike. Guys go, don't you got to warm up the bike? And I go, now this is one area that Rado, I'm going to teach him a little tip for next time to make this a little easier. But this is the screen. Now this screen, it's important to do this every time. You just pull this off like this. This is aluminum threads in aluminum case. This is steel bolt and case. These aluminum threads, they like to gall up and stick there. So I'm always real cautious of those. And so I like to put a decent amount of grease on this. I'll show you that when we put it together. So the screen comes off. I contact clean this off like this. Get any particles and go right in the inside. Flip it around. Okay, we can dry that off. We'll set that right here, or kind of out of the way. I'm going to go ahead and do that right now while this is finishing draining. This bike's been sitting, I put grease on here. I'm going to rub it into the threads and on that O-ring so it won't lock up as bad next time. Did you do that last time? Okay, so now he knows he'll never fail again. Yes. And then on here, I like to do the same thing. I like to get it on both sides of this washer. So get some grease in here, kind of, and a little bit on the threads, but the threads aren't as critical as you want it right on that washer. And so those are both ready to install now. So while I'm draining the oil, I like to let it drain for a while and I'll turn the motor over. I'll check the air filter. This one isn't terrible, but I'm going to go ahead and change it. I'll show you how we properly oil one and get one in here. These KTM's and Husky's design is so nice to pull the filter out. Okay, so at this point, I like to just kind of flush a little bit of the oil out of the engine. And so we'll hold the kill button down, hit the starter button, turn it over a couple times, and then I'll even kind of lean it over. Oh, look at that. I made a mess. Okay, so I spilled a little bit.
It's your garage.
Okay, so now I had it bucket back there since it might shoot out. So I'll lean it over like this a little bit. And you see we kind of got a lot more to come out just by turning the engine over. Okay, so the oil filter is pretty simple on these bikes. It's just right here. I like to do it after the oil's been draining a while so we don't have as big of a mess. And just get these 2 bolts. This is something I've seen guys strip out in bikes, but I've seen people strip out everything. We kind of see everything. So just want to be careful there. This O-ring in here can leak. This one's in good shape right here, so keep an eye on that. It's a good idea to have a couple of these on hand. I've got 2 or 3 of them here. Because when they go out, they start leaking pretty bad. So you want to just, I don't know. I think I probably do 8 or 10 oil changes, I bet, on one of these, so they last quite a while. And you can see we're running all over the frame here. Do you see my little pliers, Rado? Oh, here, never mind. I got them. They're under my fat roll. That's our joke, under the fat roll. Do you remember that joke? Do you know what it's from?
No.
Now, I always like to wipe everything off, and I'll even clean this out a little bit. And then I even squirt contact cleaner in here to help it drain a little bit more. Okay. So Rado's not doing too bad on the maintenance on this thing. And you notice I got this pushed in and I'm holding it with my thumb so that I get these on mainly by hand. I went all the way down. So now if guys get cross-threaded, these kind of threads will strip out pretty easy. So I always like to do as much of this by hand as you can. I've got them I mean, they're down 90% right now just by hand. That's how it should fit. Just snug right there.
Just like a spark plug, right?
Yeah. Just like that. Okay, so now that's all tight. Now we're ready to start buttoning this up. I put this in first, and I got this on here, and I got my grease on there I showed you. And I'm gonna go through, and it kind of just self-guides into that spot, and you see it goes nice and easy. Now this one, we don't want to go way tight on this thing, just that. That's it. It's tight, it ain't falling out. And then on this one, this is another one that you want to just do by hand. If it's hard to thread in by hand, then you might want to get, you for sure want to get a new bolt as soon as possible before you finish that oil change if you can. Because the bolt threads will get messed up. We usually get like, I don't know, 8 or 10 oil changes probably, and then we get a new bolt and washer. And the washer probably only 3 or 4 oil changes, and then new washer. So then when I snug this down, that's it, man. See that muscle? That's not very much muscle. So just like that, good and snug. I'm sure there's a torque spec for it. I don't have it, but just not too tight at all. So I got this. A lot of people ask where I get these. This is just on Amazon. Beaker, you can get at. You'll find them online. I'm putting in about almost 1,100 milliliters here. We do run a little bit more. I've had people write me and ask me about the sight glass on their bike, and I'm like, I never even check it. But we just put in kind of the max amount. Now, some bikes you can't get away with putting a bunch more, and some you can. How do you know that? You've got to talk to an engine builder, typically, or somebody. So these bikes, we can run 1,000 is the typical deal. We run about almost 1,100, so like 1080 range, especially when we do the filter. We did the oil filter. So, and this Henson cover slightly larger. So we want to run more oil so that now you are down. The argument is you're a tiny bit down on power. Well, if you're not Eli Tomac or whoever, you're not going to notice you're down on power. But your parts last longer, clutch lasts longer, all your oil lasts longer with more oil. The Yamahas, we have to run, like on a Yamaha 250, we run around 850 with changing both. Okay, so now I'm going to pull this out. We run, that's a Shell Rotella. We can also run, like if you want a good oil, the Klotz oil, if you want to run something from the industry. This works fine. I've shown that a bunch of times. Now I'm going to put our cap on. This is also another thing that I would put grease on, Rado. A little bit on the threads and on that O-ring. And when I say a little bit, probably more than a little bit. Now, things like this, I always like to go backwards a hair. Go backwards until you feel it get to that spot, and then go forward. Then it falls right into place. Is that how you do it, Rado?
Yeah,
okay.
Until it clicks.
Yeah, so just like that. And then you notice I'm not using this thing's already been boogered up a little bit. You don't want to use a wrench on there like a 12-point wrench. This T-handle is a 6-point, and it gets in here nice, and you can get it good and snug. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and put our new battery in. Our battery was not testing well. It was the stock battery, so I'll give it that. That's, quite a while. But these batteries, we do see some issues here with these lithium batteries, especially the stock ones. The 16s were really bad, and then from there they've been pretty decent. So I'm just getting the bolt started for this bracket, pretty simple. This Firepower batteries, we've had pretty good luck with these things so far. We're pretty happy with these. So the other battery was a little bit different in the routing of that cable. So I'm gonna just get that started like that. And then it's got a little cover for the positive side here. Make sure that's tucked out of the way. I'm going to put on my negative side. I think there's different theories on this. This is the way I was taught by my pappy. I really didn't have a pappy, believe it or not. Isn't that kind of sad? Okay. And then put that cover on there. Let's give it a little blip. Okay. Hear that fuel pump kick on? That's a nice sound, isn't it? Okay, so our battery's ready to go. Now I've got my filter cage. I like to clean off the filter cage like this and make sure there's no grit on your cage. Now you notice we have a 2-stroke cage. That's a little tip for KTM owners. You can buy the 2-stroke cage if you want. If you are stressed about your bike catching on fire, running upside down, then don't do it. But Rado crashes a decent amount, and he hasn't done it yet, so we're fine. He's like a crash test dummy on some of that stuff, so it's been good. So we've been doing it for years. But if you do blow up your bike, or bike catches on fire, it's not my fault. Anyway, so all clean, perfectly clean. And I also did the same thing in the air boot. Went around there, got a photo for you to see where you'd like to get a clean paper towel, wipe through there. And again, we were really nice and clean. We're not going to clean the filter today to save you the time of that. I have a really good video on my Instagram that shows you how to do that. I'm putting new oil on our brand new Uni filter. I've been running Uni filters for about 30 years. Isn't that crazy, Rado?
Yeah, that is.
Worked with them back.
I was in the first grade when you start running them.
Now, I don't twist the filter, like even though it kind of looks like I am, I'm squeezing it. Guys do worry about breaking down the filter. You want to just fold it up like this, and you can kind of like that. Now,
and no grease on the rim.
No grease, that's a big thing. I get a lot of guys, they comment on my stuff and say, this is no good. I've been a mechanic for 30 years and I don't trust this guy because he says no grease on the rim. No, I think he said 40 or 50 years, and that's probably why, because the bikes a long time ago, you needed extra grease in this rim because they didn't seal very well. These bikes seal very well. It's a great design. We don't have this problem, and so I think guys are stuck. And if you put, I'm going to mat it off with this blue paper towel a little bit. Okay, so now, and again, these KTM filter design is awesome. The one before this wasn't as great, but this one is just a home run. I just love it. I wish all the bikes were this easy to change a filter. And you got these two little tabs that go under the filter. And that's all there is to it. And see, Uni added this little piece, this little pad right here. That keeps you from wearing a hole in the filter. There's also a couple companies like that, AK Technologies, that makes a really, and you notice they make a really cool piece to keep that from tearing through. I was losing my thought. We use this Maxima FFT, and I do even buy this stuff, so people can go, oh, he's just saying that because, but it's probably the best stuff I've ever found out there. Now, a couple of tricks. Let's go put it in the bike. One thing I do, I got this little paper towel. This is a little trick I've learned, is I tuck it down here like this, and I make sure it's not going to get caught, but I have it right down here. That's going to help soak up anything that runs off of this when it's really hot, especially out here in California. A lot of times if you haven't matted it out well, a lot of it's going to run off and it'll just catch in there. It doesn't run down your swing arm and onto the floor of your shop and all that. And if you keep your bike in your bedroom like I would have and did when I was like, 13. So these KTMs, I didn't even have my glasses on and I got that in pretty easy. So you just push it down, clips on. Filter's such a good and strong, there's no way you need grease on here. And for anybody that knows, I use grease on a lot of stuff, just not that. So now we're going to put our side panel door on. Now, one last tip there is we have these tabs right here that all punch into place. I get a little bit of grease and put them on here. Guys have other things to use, that's totally fine. You just want something so that these things don't stick. If they stick, you end up tearing these out of the bike. Here's one here, one here. Where's our other one? Down here. It's all dirty from, residue down there. Put a little bit of this on there. It'll snap into place a whole lot better and come off next time when you need it. These things, you gotta pull from right here. And now you're, look at that, all set. The newer style is a little bit better. This is the 16 to 18 style plastic on the Husqvarna. That's all there is to putting that on. Pretty simple deal. All right, so that's a wrap on all of our tech tips for this Husqvarna KTM style bike. Oil change, did the brakes, grips, air filter, a lot of little stuff. The only things I would look at before you were to ride again would be check your chain adjustment, sprocket bolts aren't loose, those types of things. Air pressure, if you have air forks up here, check your pressure, bleed your forks on both sides. And tire pressure every time you ride. 12.5 would be a good starting point. Check your tire pressure every day before you ride. A lot of guys forget to check it or don't run in too low pressure. They pinch a tube. That can be why. So that's all there is to it. Hopefully that helps you out. We'll check you out at the tractor trail soon.